Welcome to the Sellernomics podcast. In today's episode, we'll be featuring one of the many great tools and software available to Amazon sellers to help you grow your FBA business. A special thank you to our sponsor, GETIDA, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at getida.com/Sellernomics. Now it's time to show us what you got with your hosts, Rob Stanley and Lisa Kinski.
Yay, we got our new intro for 2023.
I'm
super
official.
excited. Super excited to be back on for 2023. And we're kicking this one off with a really, really good one. Huh, Lisa? We definitely have a great guest coming into the studio.
Absolutely.
So just to go over real quick before we bring Nick into the studio, we have Nick Young, and he's coming in from MarketplaceOps. And we're going to be today talking about boost Amazon sales with CTR and CVR tips and strategies, and he will discuss what CTR and CVR mean. So why don't we get Nick into the studio here? Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thank you so much for having me, and Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year.
To you too. Yeah, it's looking forward to this. We actually been trying to schedule this for a little bit. I think this is going to be some really cool stuff because to me, you're diving into stuff that people just, when it comes to Amazon and specifically like their PPC and things like that, I kind of feel like these are overlooked a little bit, don't you?
Totally. I think one of the biggest issues is Amazon sellers, especially if you've been in the game for a while, a lot of people are focusing on tips, tricks, hacks. And, really the focus of my presentation today is about really pulling away from that and really focusing on the most important things that really drive results on Amazon. Because Amazon has changed a lot. It's become such an efficient marketplace now that really focusing on old school tactics is what's going to work for the long term. So it's really about building a sustainable strategy that's going to help people find success.
Absolutely. It always seems like the things that worked in the past, they come back slightly different with probably a little more modern twist, or maybe technologies gotten a little better. True. And, they become a value again, right? Like a valuable thing to look into or tool to use or portions of it to look at. So you know what, Nick, we're going to jump right into this. Nick, it's time to show us what you got, and let's bring your presentation up on the screen here. And why don't you take over from here?
All right. Awesome. Well, really excited for this. So guys, today, what I'm going to be talking about, and I titled this, The Golden Metrics for Driving Success on Amazon. CVR and CTR stands for conversion rate and click-through rate. And so I'll be digging into that shortly in the next few slides. And most importantly, how to make this knowledge work for your brand going into 2023. So before I get started going into this, just want to give you a little background about myself. I've been selling on Amazon since 2014. Right now, I own and co-founded an agency called MarketplaceOps, where we help brands scale and accelerate their growth on Amazon. But really, my background has been based off of having launched my own private label brands, started in 2014 at a peak with about 250 different SKUs, grossing roughly 35 million a year on Amazon with our own brands. And so we've since sold a large portion of those brands. We've also exited the Amazon software tool. And in total, we've generated about $150 million in lifetime sales on Amazon since 2014. And that's growing year over year as we add more and more clients and grow our own internal brand. So wanted to share that with you just so you guys understand where I'm coming from. I've seen so much evolution of what works and what doesn't on Amazon. And so I'll give a little more detail about what we do at MarketplaceOps later. Let's just dig into the meat and bones of the presentation. So, in the agenda today, what we're going to be talking about is first click-through rate. What is click-through rate? How do you define it? And why it's important, right? And what we can do to actually improve and troubleshoot click-through rate issues. Secondly, we're going to be talking about conversion rate and how you define conversion rate, how that impacts performance and what you can do about that, why both of these in tandem matter. And then finally, we'll close out with how you can actually structure your campaigns in your advertising campaigns on Amazon effectively to be able to utilize the information that I've shared thus far. So let's go ahead and dig into it. So let's start off with defining click-through rate. Before we even get started, what does click-through rate mean exactly? So the way we define click-through rate, and it can only be measured on Amazon through actual advertising, you can't get this data from business reports or anything like that, is the number of clicks that you get divided by the total amount of impression your product gets for a particular ad spot. So for instance, if you get 20 clicks and your ad got 1,000 impressions, that means your click-through rate is 2%. So now the question is, why is click-through rate important now? So before I kind of dig into that, I want to give a little context. Now, if you look at this picture on the right, what you have is 12 different search results. I just typed in a bunch of different things. And what I did is I highlighted in red all the different placements that are actually sponsored ads on Amazon. And this is actually done about, let's say, a year ago. So I'm sure it's changed drastically, and there's probably more spots that are sponsored related. And so it's becoming more and more obvious that Amazon is becoming a pay-to-play market, right? It's increasingly becoming more effective for ranking products. More products naturally are being added to Amazon every single day, because as people, prefer to shop on Amazon more, there'll be more sellers to service those buyers. There's far less shelf space on Amazon, on the Amazon shelf than there used to be. And what I mean by that is that there's so many more products competing for the same amount of keywords. And so that means there's just less shelf space to get as much visibility as there used to be. And so when we look at all this in tandem, what this tells us is that Amazon is increasingly looking at click-through rate as a leading indicator of whether or not your product is relevant for a particular keyword. Now, if we look at brand analytics, and as Amazon is releasing more tools available for us, we start seeing, and it proves that Amazon is looking at things like click share performance. And click share performance essentially is a form of click-through rate that tells us how your product compares relatively to other products on that search result, and therefore determines how you're positioned for that particular keyword. And so what this tells us is this indication for determining relevance, but our anecdotal experience and evidence tells us that as we improve our click-through rate, it's actually a leading indicator of how that product performs over time. And so that's why it's super, super important. I think, it's such a critical component of how Amazon evaluates new products to come to the market. If you can prove out a really high click-through rate product, you're essentially showing to Amazon your product is relevant for that keyword, and it becomes much easier to rank the product, even if you're coming in and it's completely brand new. So first off, before we dive in deeper, now the question is, how do you effectively measure click-through rate? So again, going back to what I said earlier, the only way that you can measure click-through rate is through advertising. And so measuring click-through rate is really only conclusive when you're targeting top of search TOS placement within Campaign Manager, or within your particular campaign. That means that you're paying for more visibility to be at the top of search, in the first section of that search result. Now, the reason why it's most conclusive when you pay for that spot is because, as you can imagine, if you're bidding lower and your placement is lower in the search results, naturally less people just convert when you're placed there. So the results aren't going to be as conclusive as opposed to if you're getting the most eyeballs in the section that gets the most visibility, right? And so that's really important. It's important before you actually look at that click-through rate number, that you're ensuring that you're getting that visibility top of search, which allows you to then use that click-through rate percentage as an effective benchmark. And so usually top of search will come with a high click-through rate, meaning above 1.5% on most cases. In other words, if your product is relevant, right, and you're top of search, then usually it'll be above 1.5%. However, a click-through rate below 1% with a top of search impression share above 5%, and again, impression share, what that means is how much share of impressions you're getting for that particular keyword. If you're getting 5% of it or above, and your click-through rate is below, that means that your particular product is not relevant in Amazon's eyes for that particular key term. Now, your question might be, okay, well, how do I actually find all this information? Well, the best source of finding that information is going to be under Amazon's Search Impression Share Report, which you can find in Campaign Manager under the report section. I find that this is a very underutilized report. A lot of people don't use this, but it's really valuable because you can actually get your PPC conversion rate, your click-through rate, and you can calculate that by figuring out how many impressions you got against how many clicks, or actually inverse that, and then also your impression share for that particular keyword. So definitely dig into that data. I think a lot of that is going to make more sense, once you get familiar with that report. So moving on. Now, when we think about click-through rate, I want to first, before I go into why click-through rate is poor, I want to first start off by, really talking about that customer journey. If you think about how you shop on Amazon, the way, click-through rate shows up is, let's say I want to buy, headphones, right? Like AirPods, for instance. If I type in wireless headphones into Amazon, the way click-through rate is measured is off of all the results that I see there, which product am I clicking, right? All of those got an impression and I'm clicking into that. And so really that's the journey, that's the experience. If you are missing that click from that impression, that means you've already lost out on that sale completely. So it's all about getting people to your door. And so what are the factors that really impact this click-through rate? Well, it really comes out to 4 sections. And it comes out down to a mixture of your main image, your price, your title, and how your reviews appear. And so what we call this nomenclature we use is product tile. You see this thing on the right over here. That mixture and that combination of factors is the product tile. And so I'll go through each of these one by one. But on the right-hand side, I took one of the best sellers that I found on Amazon. And this is a great example of a well-merchandised product tile. And I'll dig in, after I go into each of these sections. So first off, main image. I think this is really obvious to me, but for a lot of people, they don't really put enough emphasis on this, which is this is really your customer's first impression of your product, right? Your offer has to be compelling and stand out against your relevant competitors on the shelf. And if your image isn't compelling, it just looks very generic, it's not communicating your unique selling proposition, then you've lost that customer, you've lost that click, and you've completely lost the sale. So it's really important that you really figure out how to really draw attention to your listing through your imagery. I think a great example of this and a really simple way that they do this is Zesty Paws. Zesty Paws doesn't necessarily offer anything novel in terms of their product quality. It's a pet supplement brand. But what they did differently is they really merchandised their packaging to be orange, to pop out in color, whereas everyone else had really boring packaging, right? And because theirs stood out, naturally it drives attention, and attention drives clicks. When you get that attention, your people are naturally going to look at your listing, and that's the first part that you really need to win. Next is price. Amazon customers obviously care about price and value. So the question is, when customers are looking at your product tile and your price point, in combination with your main image, does your product scream value? If you're not priced competitively and you're actually positioned to be premium in your market, are you effectively communicating the differentiating factors that justify this additional premium? That's a big problem that I see. A lot of Amazon sellers will say, hey, my product is the best. I know it because I've tried all the products, and I know that mine is the best quality. But if you can't convey that your product is the best quality through the product tile, then how are customers going to know if they haven't clicked your product? And that's something that you always have to understand and really think about from the customer's perspective. People aren't psychic. They won't immediately know if something is quality. So your product also has to scream quality and premium in order to justify that price point. Next is your title. Primary keywords, or the important keywords that drive those conversions, should be early in the title. Amazon now releases data that tells us effectively that 60% of shoppers shop on mobile. What does that mean? Well, that means that really when customers are looking at your listing and looking at the title in the search results page, they can only really see the first 60 to 70 characters. So really the important keywords that customers need to see need to be in that first 60 to 70 characters. So for instance, if for whatever reason you're not able to communicate, a certain quality or an element of your product that will differentiate your product in the image, then the title is the next best way to actually do that. So beyond just your target keywords, you can include what those differentiating qualities are in the title where customers will actually see it. If you do at the end of the title, they won't see it and it won't help and aid, your conversion into a click. And then finally, reviews. Enough said. I don't need to say much there. Bad reviews have to be addressed early on and quickly. Gone are the days where you could just prop up a bad listing with, paid reviews. Those days are over. At the bare minimum, every single seller needs to have a high quality product that will naturally lead to, quality reviews. And if you start, reviews and all your competitors are relatively higher in the rating, it's, just a recipe for disaster. So the combination of these four elements are really critical. Now, if we look on the right-hand side, this, particular product really nails that. Even from the way it's visually positioned, the usage of color, oftentimes we'll test even just angles to see which one is the most effective. And it just really draws a lot of visual, a visual, focus towards their product. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we really focus on is also cropping all the white space on the edges of an image. Why do we do that? Well, because when you actually crop it and you make the image a bit taller than it is wide, it actually appears larger in the search results on mobile. And what ends up happening is customers subconsciously think they're getting more value for their money because the product appears larger. And it's a really subconscious element. But again, we're really trying to do everything we can to marginally increase that click-through rate and to drive that performance. Now, the question is, okay, well, I'm telling you all these different factors that drive, performance. What is the solution? How do we figure out how we can actually improve click-through rate? Well, the best way is polls, and more polls. I think this is going to be the biggest conversation in the next 2 years on Amazon. This is going to really be what separates good sellers or bad sellers from great sellers. And this is something we've been using religiously for the past 2 years. So really, there's no better way to actually understand how you are positioned against your competitors, what drives a customer to click, than to actually get those insights directly from customers before you even launch your product, or if you want to make improvements to your product. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through a step-by-step system that we use when we're actually merchandising a product from scratch, but you can apply these same principles to an existing product that you want to improve. But first off, before I go into those steps, I have two tools I can recommend. I think a lot of people are familiar with PickFu. It's a great polling platform. It's been around for a while, but it's not necessarily Amazon focused. I know, more recently they've been focusing on Amazon, but really what I highly recommend is a tool we've been using for years called IntelliView. It is focused around Amazon sellers, and they have focus groups and incredible polling tools that you can use that are specific to Amazon. So definitely recommend that if you want to run effective polling. So generally what we do as a step-by-step process when we're launching a product or we're merchandising a product to launch is we want to first understand who are our relevant competitors, who are we targeting. If you don't know who you're targeting and how you're positioning your product, then you're really positioning yourself to lose. And so, oftentimes a lot of people go into Amazon and say, oh, well, I'm just going after the best seller, right? But, oftentimes their unique selling proposition doesn't align. So just because that top seller is selling the best, it might just be because they're the cheapest price point. If you're not the cheapest price point, then they're not a direct competitor. So it's super important to understand who your direct competitor is within your niche. And so that means that it's roughly in the similar price range, within 15 to 20% in either direction, up or down. They offer a similar unique selling point, right? Similar benefits, and they're top performers in their kind of subcategory, sub-niche. And so when you're able to identify the right direct competitors, then now you can plug them into what we call a blind poll. And a blind poll is basically a poll where we just plug in the competitors and do not include our variations, so that we can understand, for these guys who are already performing well, what drives a customer to click one product over the other, and how can we use those insights and that feedback that they give us to identify the elements that are important for customers to drive a click. When we can understand what those elements are, now we can transpose those ideas and those insights to our product and merchandise it even more effectively. And this can inform even the product development process, but obviously, it can work for an existing product as well. And so what we'll do is we'll generally uncover really interesting insights. For instance, when we were merchandising a particular product, we're trying to understand, like, okay, well, is organic more important, or is being vegan more important? We actually ran the poll. We found that significantly more people were willing to pay more for an organic product over a vegan product. So that informed our product development decision. But again, these insights are going to be critical, because the more you can uncover a need of what customers are looking for, the easier you can communicate that in your product tile. And if you can do that effectively, you're going to get more clicks. So as a next step, step 3, what we do is we take those insights, we work directly with the designer, come up with 3 to 4 different variations of that main image of that product tile, and then we start running the poll again, right? Now we include these variations into polls against these competitors we identified, and then we find the ones that perform the best. And then we keep doubling down, we keep running those polls over and over again until we get to a final result that wins 40 to 50% of the clicks. Now, keep in mind, when you're running a poll, for it to be statistically significant, you want to make sure that you have at least 30 respondents per option. So if you're running 5 different options within a single poll, you want 150 different respondents, okay? And so if you can win 50% of those clicks, what we found is pretty much 9 out of 10 times, that correlates directly to performance on Amazon. And immediately out the gate, we see not only incredible click-through rate, we see incredible conversion rate, and we're seeing incredible sales from the very get-go with very few reviews. So, oftentimes what we do is we spend at least $2,500 before we even launch a product to determine whether or not we want to go live with the product. If we can't win in the polling, then that just means that we're not going to continue on with this product. It was worthwhile for us to spend that money to mitigate any kind of potential disaster of having inventory that won't sell. So, this is really critical. Question. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you're doing that, and that's an interesting topic you brought up, that if you're not even winning it, you're not even going live with this product. Now, when you're running these polls, I assume that you probably have kind of take this back a little bit, but you've probably already sourced it. You have the right place to get this. You got the manufacturer lined up. So when it does, I'm assuming you haven't bought inventory yet, because if it loses, you're kind of out that money, right?
Exactly.
So could you step back, just give us just a high level of kind of that back process before you get to even that poll when you guys are kind of evaluating a product?
Yeah, I mean, like if we're evaluating a product, we have a bunch of product ideas, right? And so we'll have a ton of product ideas, and then we'll think about, okay, well, how do we merchandise effectively to win? I mean, I think, it's important that you merchandise a product that's perceived to be of better value than other products, and you need to validate that with polling. And so we'll just constantly test these ideas and figure out what's important. You can even go a step back and try to focus on the problem, right? So before we even go into the particular product that addresses a solution, we can work backwards and say, hey, you have issues with smells in your car. What would you pick as a solution, right? Or like, what would you do to solve this problem? And that through that question, the way you phrase that question is going to uncover a ton of insights as to what customers naturally think of or what problems they think of. And then you can come up with a particular product that addresses that solution. And so I think, it's important to go further back. I'll give an example, actually. I've been reading a lot about polling recently. There's one particular book that I read, and basically this is consultant work with a bunch of chocolate companies, and what they were trying to understand was how do we, get women to buy more chocolate, or how do women buy chocolate? And so through their polling, they uncovered that women tend to, when they think or talk about chocolate, they feel guilty, but that guilt actually compels them to buy chocolate. And when they buy the chocolate, they ask them, what do you do when you buy the chocolate? Well, turns out a majority of those women actually would just take a single bite and throw the chocolate away, and because they felt guilty. And so what happened as a result of that insight? Well, they ended up actually then creating those single serving chocolate bites. You see that everywhere now. But back then it was revolutionary, right? And so that's a perfect example of how when you ask the right questions to your target customer, you can uncover really important insights that can actually create a competitive advantage strategically about how you merchandise an offer that's compelling for your customers. And so that revolutionized it. It's now standard, but the first person to do that, you can imagine, just crushed it completely. And that's really what I want people to think about. The power of just really leveraging polling to uncover insights. Make sense, Rob?
Yeah, no, that's great insight. Appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So now that we've kind of tackled click-through rate, the next step is conversion rate. Where does conversion rate take place? Well, now customers clicked into your listing. You've won half the battle. The second half is actually converting them, on your listing. And so when I talk about conversion rate, by the way, I'm talking specifically about your advertising conversion rate. Naturally, there will be some kind of correlation between your organic conversion and your PPC, but you can assume that if you're converting well for your PPC, it's going to, carry over well to just your organic conversion rate when you get that organic placement. Now, in terms of how you define conversion rate, it's essentially the number of orders in proportion to the number of clicks. So how many total clicks you've been able to convert into sales. That's essentially how we convert that. So, now that we know how that's how to calculate conversion rate, we can actually then go to the search impression share report and calculate that specifically, assuming that we, have that top of search. Now we can work backwards and figure out what the natural conversion rate is for your advertising. And now the question is, once you have that information, how do we know if our product performs well relative to the market? Well, now Amazon gives us tools that we can access through Seller Central that gives us an ability to actually benchmark our performance. So if you actually look, there's Amazon's Product Opportunity Explorer. This is in the growth section. It's a module. When you click in there and you type in any keyword, you can now find for a particular keyword, in this instance, sleep aid, what the search conversion rate is. So in this instance, it's 12% for the last 360 days. And now that's my new benchmark. If my actual conversion rate is greater than 12%, then great. Now I can actually increase my sales. Maybe I'll do more top of search. And generally, this is kind of the way we look at it or think about it, or decision tree, I guess you could say. So if you look at Amazon's search impression share report to evaluate whether or not your 7-day CVR beats the market conversion rate for target keyword, if it's yes, check the impression share percentage. If it's low, in other words, less than 2%, crank up that top of search placement to see if you can drive more visibility to the listing and drive more conversions. Because naturally, as you get more conversions through advertising for that particular keyword, you're going to rank organically for that keyword as well. And more organic placement means more organic sales. If no, and your impression share, if your 7-day CVR does not beat that benchmark, then prioritize improving your conversion rate so that you can beat that benchmark. Each additional conversion from this placement is going to help drive more rank, again, which will drive organic sales and cheaper top of search placement. Okay, so let's navigate why conversion rate is poor. Well, there are a couple different reasons. I think if you're an experienced seller, generally you'll know what those are. beyond just like the listing optimizations, these are certain things that could be a factor. First off, maybe the keyword that you decided to go after with top of search is too broad. In this example, I'm saying, let's say you sell peach flavored iced tea and the targeted keyword is iced tea. But I think a better example would be, let's say, for instance, you sell a protein bar and you're targeting the keyword protein snacks. Well, naturally, if you really, really think about it from a customer perspective, if I'm typing in protein snacks, that could mean so many different things. It could mean protein chips, protein chocolate bar, it could mean protein drink or shake, right? And so protein bar would be one of the many different options. So really protein snacks would not be a keyword that I'd go after. And that might be why your conversion rate is poor when you're tackling that particular keyword. Next is your detail page is not optimized for the targeted keyword. So what we often do is if we know exactly what keyword segment we're targeting, then what we'll do is we'll focus on, maybe one keyword grouping at a time that speaks to a particular segment. So when we identify what those keywords are and they're related in terms of need and demand, we'll then customize our messaging in our listing to make sure that we're communicating effectively to that audience and what their needs or their problems are, so that way we can drive improvement in conversion rate. Next is maybe your offer isn't convincing enough. In other words, like you're not doing an us versus them slide, right? In your images, you're not selling your product enough, or you're not providing enough information about your product, and customers have to hop elsewhere. Another one is maybe your potential customer who's at your detail page has been hijacked by another seller. And what I mean by that is they're advertising on your listing with a way better product tile, and their product tile is, speaking more effectively to that customer than you are on your detail page. Well, then, that means that we need to work on that. Next is, maybe your most recent reviews are negative. That's something that you need to work around too. As I mentioned before, negative reviews are something you need to tackle early on. And then, your photo gallery, obviously, if it's not optimized enough, lack of infographics, lifestyle images, product in action, that's going to lead to poor conversion rates. And so oftentimes what I find when I work with prospects or clients is that, they think that customers actually read the bullets, but the truth is bullets and title, that's generally there for Amazon. Images, reviews, price point, that's there for customers. When I think about my own shopping experience, those are the three factors that I look at to really make my buying decision. So if you're not reflecting your selling points in the images and you're not including text and imagery, and you're not really making a case in your images, then, you're really not optimizing your listing for success. So these are some of the, many different examples of why your conversion rate might be poor. Now, if we tie this all together, then the question is, well, okay, why this all matters? Like, why am I digging into this? Well, at the end of the day, Amazon is such an efficient marketplace now. As I alluded to earlier, all the tools, the tips, the tricks that worked before aren't working now because Amazon's fixed all those issues. So now it's so efficient that really Amazon is prioritizing and focusing on metrics that prioritize the best products that customers love and like that are relevant to those searches. And so that means that click-through rate and conversion rate are the ultimate indicators of whether or not your product is relevant and whether it matches customer needs. So if you're able to marginally increase any of these factors, you are positioning yourself for success because these numbers will compound over time. For instance, if your click-through rate increases over time just marginally by 1 or 2 percentage points, that means that your advertising is going to be cheaper and it compounds long term. Same thing with conversion rate. You don't even have to drive additional traffic. If you maintain, additional traffic, if you maintain, let's say, I'm not going to use exact numbers. Can't think of it off the top of my head. But let's just say you don't pay for additional traffic and increase your conversion rate by just 1%. You will dramatically increase the amount of sales that you drive without paying for more traffic. So imagine if you combine these two, it's going to drive not only more efficiency and better organic placement, it's going to drive immediate success out the gate if you can maximize this before you even go live. And that's what we found. I mean, if you look at some of the results, here's one example. This is a product that we launched. Again, we've been doing this for a while back in 2020, but you'll see that within the first month from November to December, we did just a few promotions, and this is just through some influencer groups, some light giveaways, just so we can get the product out there and initiate some purchases. But a majority of this came through PPC and organic sales. And so we went within a month to, at our peak, close to 200 units. And then we ran out of stock because we did not anticipate, that amount of success. And now, this product at the end of this cycle of April was doing about 200 units. Now this product easily does about 400 to 500 units a day. And honestly, we have not changed anything as it relates to the way the product is merchandised because we did so much work up front. So again, this is really going to pad you for long-term success if you can really do this effectively and do your homework up front. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's talk about structuring your ad campaigns for success. So some of this might, I think be obvious for some people who've been selling on Amazon for a while. But, I think really how you structure your ad campaigns is really critical for being able to dissect what's driving success for your product. And so you'll notice I talk about things like top of search placement and all those different things. Well, having a consistent structure and how you organize your campaigns is critical for being able to dig in and understand where customers are coming from. And so, there isn't really a one size all approach when it comes to structure your ad campaigns. Generally, some people will do something like, you have your products, then you have different campaigns for that product separated by automatic campaigns and manual campaigns. Then there's within those, within the manual, there's broad, phrase, and exact within that same campaign. This works for a lot of people, but generally, I don't really recommend that. What we like to do instead is we like to do, multiple campaigns for a particular product. And then we'll have one particular campaign that focuses on broad match, another campaign that focuses on exact match, another campaign that focuses on phrase match. And then in addition to that, we'll do single keyword campaigns. In other words, if we find that a keyword is performing so well and it's so relevant, or maybe we're focusing exclusively on that keyword, we'll just create a single campaign only for that keyword for that product, because there's so many different levers that we can adjust within that campaign. If we add a bunch more keywords, it's going to dilute where that budget is being allocated towards, and you're not going to get the amount of attention that that particular keyword needs. And so using this approach allows you to be a lot more granular. Obviously, it requires that you be a lot more organized, but that's where we can start playing around with top of search multipliers and all those different additional levers that Amazon has within kind of the campaign adjustments. Next thing I generally suggest is, a lot of people love doing automatic campaigns. And look, I understand why it makes things easy, but the reality is that, auto campaigns can really confuse Amazon's algorithm. We don't advise this approach because if you think about it, Amazon is just placing your product across all these different keywords and testing. They don't really care what your likelihood for conversion rate is on that keyword. And the truth is, best what keywords are going to be relevant for your keyword if you've done your research appropriately. And so what we always recommend is you train the algo, right? You spend the first 2 to 3 months focusing on the primary keywords that are really relevant to your product if you've done your research correctly. And you also do some product targeting campaigns, meaning really aggressive campaigns against the key competitors that you identified in your polling. Because if you've done your homework, you win against those competitors, right? You're one of those guys that's targeting them or hijacking their listing with advertising, and now you're stealing sales from them. As you drive more conversions from their listing, what's going to happen is Amazon is going to start associating your product with their product, and any keywords that they're placed for, they're relevant for, now you're going to get visibility for those keywords as well. That's a fantastic way to actually really refine how Amazon associates and understands your product. Eventually, once you feel like Amazon has a good handle of what your product targets, who your product is speaking to, what need your product solves, then you can start running auto campaigns, and what you'll find is a lot more accurate over time. And so, again, the other benefit here is that if you run auto campaigns from the very beginning, because you're testing against so many different keywords, your conversion rate on all these keywords is going to be relatively poor when you have no base of traffic. And so if you have a strong base of traffic from really relevant keywords, once you start adding auto campaigns, it's not going to tank your listing. And what we want to show to Amazon over time is that you're really, maintaining your conversion rates while also increasing your traffic. And that's going to really help boost the success of your product. Okay, let's keep going. Finally, just, regularly optimizing CPC campaigns to find the optimal price. So I think this is pretty straightforward. This is pretty common knowledge, but I'll go through this for people who maybe are still new to this. We recommend optimizing your keyword bids weekly. Sometimes you can do 2 times per week, but the issue is Amazon has kind of an attribution delay window. So usually weekly, I think is sufficient. But the rules are this: if your ACoS is higher than your target value, and usually your target value is your net margin, and ACoS is advertised cost of sales, then lower your bid to test whether ad spend and sales can be brought to an optimal ratio. If ACoS is lower than the target value, same thing, that net margin percentage, then test whether your ads reach and sales can be increased by raising the bid. And if your keywords aren't generating enough sales impressions, increase your bid so you can get more traction. if your keywords aren't converting or are only costing you over a long period of time, and they can't be adjusted in profitable price range, turn off that keyword. And this is just fundamentals of how you can create a decision tree around what to do around every single keyword. And there's a lot of tools out there that you can use to optimize this as well. So that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Again, if you have any questions about anything that I mentioned, feel free to reach out. But yeah, we're always happy to have conversations with brands that are looking for help with their product line.
That was excellent. Excellent stuff, Nick. You know what? That was a great presentation. I got to say that's a Money Man approved presentation right there. So definitely, definitely approved by the Money Man. So, yep. Oh, I got to get that off the screen. Nick, that was some great information. Tell everybody, though, a little bit about Marketplace Ops, a little bit about what you guys do, then how they can get a hold of you, both the website, email, and that whole thing. Because, you didn't just cover a little bit. You covered, to be honest, a lot that any seller just starting out should be watching this video over and over again. Because when it comes to listings, you didn't just cover one area of listings, you covered a lot of it. And that was amazing content. So, but definitely tell everybody what Marketplace Ops does and how it can help Amazon sellers.
For sure. So Marketplace Ops was created out of, our own experience launching brands. As I mentioned, we at one point had 250 different SKUs, and that allowed us to build a team of globally 70 people who handle all the 4 pillars of managing an Amazon business, that being content, advertising, inventory management, operations. And so what we are is we are a turnkey solution for companies that are looking to expand their presence on Amazon. We also offer, standalone offerings, like we recently launched a PPC only service. But basically, we leverage our own expertise and experience to help develop that strategy for our clients and help them grow. I think really the differentiating quality here is that, it's all based off of real world experience. And what we find is a lot of agencies out there, they just started off as agencies, which means that they don't really have skin in the game. And so for us, we still have a significant portion of our business that's tied to products in really competitive categories like supplements. And so that means that for us to stay competitive, we have to have ideas and new strategies to maintain our position. And as a byproduct, any kind of new insights or learnings that we have, we roll out as best practices for our clients. And, that's really, I think, kind of our differentiating quality and what we really offer to clients that we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus the fact that, between the 3 of you, there's a lot of years of experience there. So
definitely
a lot of money and a lot of years of experience. So Nick, just real quick, tell everybody, give the website name, the email. I'll make sure to put it up on the screen here for everybody.
Sure.
So they can go ahead though.
Yeah, it's going to be marketplaceops.com. Feel free to reach out to me directly by email, nick@marketplaceops.com. And if you want a free consultation, feel free to reach out. You can sign up on the website. There's going to be a form. But these are definitely the best places to reach out.
Amazing.
That's perfect. Yeah. At least anything else you needed to add to that? What a presentation.
Just that was a marketing crash course, and I'm a little upset at how much I've spent on certifications because I could have just come here. No, that was
awesome. I love it.
No,
Thank you.
It was definitely you definitely helped us kick off 2023. Show us what you got.
With a bang.
It's going to be a hard one to follow up. Let me tell you, I'm going to have to really think about who we can get on here to maybe beat Nick here, but probably in a different area. Probably not even this area. Nick, thank you so much for being on. Show us what you got. If I missed anything, feel free to jump in, share a little more. But amazing content. Again, everybody should definitely watch this video a few times. Reach out to Marketplace Ops. Reach out to Nick. His email will be also in the description below. Hit that like, that thumbs up. We do appreciate it. Nick, thank you again. It took you a little while to get on here. We had a little scheduling issue, but definitely worth it. 100% worth it. So
thanks you so much,
Nick.
guys.
We really appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Sellernomics podcast. Special thanks to our sponsor, GETIDA. Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GETIDA.com/Sellernomics. Be sure to join us again next week for more great tips on how to grow your business. And thanks again for listening.